For the front panels, we're going to have a left side and a right side, but they're both going to start exactly the same. For the body, I'm going to start with a slip knot. So I have my yarn here over my hand, wrap it around my index finger 2 times, hold the tension with my middle finger and my thumb, pull the loop on the left up over the other one, but not off my finger. Pull the loop that's on the left now up over the other one and off my finger. Insert my hook into that loop on my finger, and then I'll tighten up. I am making just a small sample that fits with the other sample that I showed you for the back panel. I'm going to put up a chart showing how many chains you should have depending on the size that you're working. To adjust from the chains that I'm providing, you can either add or subtract in multiples of 3. But overall, whatever number you end up chaining, you need to be able to take 4 away and then divide that by 3 evenly. For my sample, I'm starting with a chain 13. As we work this, the same concepts apply from the back panel. We're just making a smaller version of the back panel. So if you've added or subtracted any chains from the back panel when you worked, you'll want to do the same thing here. We're going to double crochet into the 4th chain from the hook and continue double crocheting across the row. There's row 1, row of double crochet, row 2 is going to be the first row of the repeat. Just like in the back panel, we're going to work clusters. We'll start with a chain 2, turn, double crochet into the 2nd stitch, double crochet into the 3rd stitch, chain 2, skip 2 stitches, cluster stitch in the next stitch, and work your repeat all the way down the row until you have 5 stitches left and worked. In my case, I just have 1 cluster. I've chained 2, skipped 2, and I'm going to double crochet into each of the last 3 stitches. And then the 2nd row, the repeat, row 3, chain 2, turn, double crochet into each stitch and space all the way across, just as we have been doing. So 1 double crochet into that chain space, 1 double crochet into the chain, 1 double crochet into the top of the cluster stitch, and continue all the way across the row. In your last chain space, you're going to work 2 double crochets into that space, and then double crochet into each of the last 3 double crochets. And we're going to continue working this so that it matches our back panel, the body of our back panel. This is the body of our back panel before we added the arms. So you want to make sure that this piece is the same number of rows and ends on a cluster row as the back panel. You're going to have two of these front body panels. Once you get to the arms, then we divide to make one for a left side and one for a right side. I'm going to go ahead and work this sample so that it matches my back panel, and then I'll show you how to do the arms. If you have added or subtracted rows to make your body panel longer, make sure that your front panels match. Here is the chart showing how many rows you should have depending on the size that you are working and the length that you are working. Alright, here is my front panel so far. It matches my back panel. I ended on a cluster stitch row, and it is the same height as my back panel. Now I'm going to start adding the arms, and the arms that we add here are going to match the same exact stitches that we used in the arms for the back panel. So if you've added or subtracted any stitches from the arms, you're going to want to have the same exact number here. It's basically worked the same way as the back panel. We're just working half of the back panel, so it's only going to have one of the arms. I'm going to start with the left side, and this is the side that starts with a chain. Here's a chart showing how many chains you should have depending on the size that you're working and the length of your sleeves. For my sample, I worked a chain 22. For the back panel, I am going to work 22 here. My chains are complete, and now I'm going to work down them the same exact way, starting with a double crochet in the 4th chain from the hook. And then I'll continue double crocheting into each chain up until the body. There's my last double crochet of the chains I just added. Now I'm at the body of this front panel. I'm going to double crochet into each stitch and space all the way across. And there we go, the first row of the arms for the front left panel. Our next row is going to be a cluster stitch row, chain 2, turn, double crochet into the 2nd stitch, double crochet into the 3rd stitch, chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches, cluster stitch into the next stitch. When we get to the end where it matches the body panel, we want to double crochet there into those 3 stitches, and then cluster stitch all the way across, working 3 double crochets into the last stitch of that row as well. There's the end of the cluster stitch row. We lined up the double crochets there in the middle, and then we have double crochets on each end. So for the front panels, you're going to have 9 double crochets no matter which size you're working. The number of clusters will vary. Now we're just going to continue working in pattern, alternating cluster stitch rows and double crochet rows until we have the same number of rows that match our back panel. In my sample I just have 3 rows, so I'm just going to work 1 more row to match it. Then I'm going to work another body section, and I'll be back to show you how to do the sleeves for the right side. Alright, I've worked a second front body panel, and it matches the same number of rows that I had in my first body panel, which also matches the same number of rows I have in my back panel body as well. I will put up those charts again showing how many rows you should have depending on the size that you're working and the length that you've chosen. Just make sure that if you've made any changes to the original one that you're working, that you match it in this other panel. So here we've worked the left side front panel. Now we need to work the right side front panel. The left side began with a chain, and then we worked down the chain. The right side panel uses the foundation double crochet. Let me move this out of the way. So we're going to start with a chain 2, and we're going to work our double crochets across the row as normal. And now that I've reached the end of the row there, we need to start adding our foundation double crochets. We're going to do it the same exact way as we did before with the same exact number of stitches. So I worked a chain 22, which gave me 20 double crochets. Here I need to work 20 foundation double crochets. We're going to yarn over, insert your hook right into the last stitch that you just worked that double crochet into, yarn over, pull through. You have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 1 loop only, that creates your foundation chain, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Yarn over, insert your hook directly into the center of that foundation chain there on the bottom, picking up both loops from the bottom. Yarn over, pull through. There are 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through 1 loop only, that creates your foundation chain. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Yarn over, insert your hook right into the center of that foundation chain, picking up both loops there from the bottom. Yarn over, pull through, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 1 loop only to create the foundation chain. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Right now I have 1, 2, 3 foundation double crochets worked. I am going to continue working until I have 20. There's my last foundation double crochet, and here is the first row of the right front panel. This should mirror the left front panel. So looking at them, you should have the same exact body, and then on the left side you worked a chain, worked down the chain, you have your arm. Here on the right side we worked across, did foundation stitches. So now we have a right side and a left side. We're going to continue working the same exact way as we did for the left front panel on the right front panel, and for the same number of rows so they both match. Here is the chart showing how many rows you should have depending on the size that you are working. I'm going to go ahead and continue working now so that my panels match, and then I'll be back to show you how to assemble them. Alright, I have all my panels done. I am not fastening off any of these because I'm going to reuse this yarn. This is just a small sample. I have my big one worked up already. So don't mind all the yarn that you see. But here is one of our front panels, matching front panel that's mirrored, and then our back panel here. The side that has the puffed out cluster stitches, that is the right side. We're going to assemble our top now. I slip stitch join, that is my preferred method because I can crochet it and I don't have to hand stitch it. If you prefer to hand stitch it, you can whip stitch the pieces together. I am going to show how to crochet the pieces together using a slip stitch. We're going to lay out our back piece here with the right side facing us. That is the puffed out side facing us. Then we're going to take our front panel, we want all the puffed out stitches from the front panel to be facing down. Basically, we're going to be working with the inside of the cardigan. So I'm just matching it up here with my back panel with the puff stitches facing each other. And then I'll do the same thing with my other panel, puff stitches on the inside. And we're just lining up the fabric pieces here. We want it to be even so that when we stitch it, the finished cardigan comes out even. So I've just lined up the ends of my arms there and the side of the cardigan there. Your cardigan will have a bigger space here in the middle. In the original pattern, there's a 5-inch gap in there to account for your neck. And we're going to work collar there, which will close up that space. For now, we're going to stitch our pieces together, and you're going to leave this space here in the middle for your arm to go through. You will stitch up the underarm and the side, and then we'll leave the bottom open for our bodies to fit. Do the same thing on the other side, up the side, across the underarm. And then you go to the top and you stitch from the end of the arm all the way up. That is going to be your shoulder over here. And then we'll have the neck opening, and then you'll stitch again from the other shoulder across the arm. Let me find out where my yarn is coming from. It's coming from over here, so this is where I'm going to start. I'm going to chain 1 and turn here. You don't need to fasten off the last piece. If you're going to slip stitch, if you already have, just attach your yarn. Line up your stitches and your layers together. Insert your hook into the very first stitch from the top panel, picking up both loops. Then hold that tension there. Match it up with the very first stitch from the back panel. In this case, it's the top of the turning chain. Insert your hook right into the top of that stitch, and now you have both panels on your crochet hook. Yarn over, pull through the stitches from the panel, and pull through the stitch that's on your hook. Then insert your hook into the next stitch from the top panel. Insert your hook into the corresponding stitch from the bottom panel. You have both panels on your crochet hook. Yarn over, pull through the stitches from the panels, and pull through the loop that's on your hook. Insert your hook into the next stitch from the top panel. Insert your hook into the corresponding stitch from the bottom panel. You have both panels on your hook. Yarn over, pull through all the stitches. And continue going all the way across until you reach the end of the front panel. Make sure when you work across here you are lining up your stitches. You do not want it to come out crooked, you want it to come out even, so just continue working across, matching up the corresponding stitches. I have one more stitch left. This is the top of the turning chain here. Just make sure not to miss that stitch. And there is the end of the top there. That's the shoulder and the top of the arm. They are now connected there. Fasten off your yarn, pull up on the loop to break it, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to pull up a loop here. Then you will come to the other side here, line everything up, insert your hook into the last stitch, insert your hook into the corresponding stitch of the back panel. If I were reattaching my yarn here, I would have a tail end, put it on my hook, pull it through. I would tie a knot, like yarn over, pull through once, then grab my working yarn, chain 1. This is going to join that first panel, so you don't need to work a slip stitch there. Start slip stitching into the second stitch, working through both layers, and continue all the way across the same exact way that you just did. There's the end of that top part. They are now connected. Fasten off your yarn, pull up on that loop to break it, rotate your piece, reattach your yarn here at the bottom through both of those stitches. If this was my new strand, it would be cut right here. I would put it on my hook, pull it through, all the way through, tie a knot once, and then chain 1. That counts as the join for that first stitch. Begin slip stitching starting in the second stitch, working through the corresponding stitch on the bottom layer, and work all the way across till you get to the underarm. Then we'll rotate it and we'll work down the side. There's my last stitch of the underarm. Now I'm going to rotate and we're going to join the sides. When working in double crochet, you work 2 stitches per double crochet row. So you're going to see 2 different sides from the stitches being worked on the right side and on the wrong side. The next stitch is from the right side. Insert your hook into the center of that stitch, picking up 2 loops on your hook, and then the bottom is reversed, so the next one just looks like a hole. Insert your hook into that as well, and complete a slip stitch. Then the next stitch here, you see a top leg, a bottom leg, and a leg that's swooped over. Insert your hook right into the center of all that so that you just pick up 2 loops on your hook, The next stitch from the bottom layer is right underneath the hole. Insert right in there. You also have 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over, complete your slip stitch. The next stitch here looks like a hole, insert your hook there. The bottom layer has the top leg and the leg that's swooped over. You can't see the bottom leg, but insert your hook there, and when you push the stitches back, you'll see that bottom leg. You want to insert your hook in between those so that you're only picking up the stitch that is on the edge. Complete a slip stitch. Insert your hook into the next stitch here. You could see the back bump from that chain right into the center. Bottom layer has the top leg, the bottom leg, and the leg that's swooped over. Insert right into the center on the edge, picking up 2 loops on your hook. And just continue working down. You want to work as close to the edge as possible. You're usually going to have 2 loops on your hook, and you're going to match up the stitches so that you're working into the top of the double crochet for one, and then you work into the bottom of the double crochet for the other one. And this will line up as well. If you're not working into the corresponding stitches, then this is going to turn out lopsided. So just make sure you're working into the top of the double crochet for one and into the bottom of the double crochet for the other join. Continue working all the way down the row. And this one has one more stitch here from the foundation and into the hole from where you slip stitched. And now the side is complete. Fasten off your yarn, pull up a loop so that you can break it. Then rotate your fabric here. You want to leave the bottom open. You'll come to the next corner, join your yarn there, insert into the corresponding stitch from the bottom layer, attach your yarn, that connects the first stitch, begin slip stitching into the next stitch. You're just looking at the back side of them now. They look very similar to how they did before, and you're just going to work up now, matching up the stitches, working 2 slip stitches per double crochet row. Do not do what I just did and insert your hook into the hole there. You want to work into the stitches as close to the edge as you can get. That is going to give you a very clean edge. And it's going to avoid big holes on the end. If I were to have just inserted into that hole like I tried to do, then I will end up with holes where the seam is on the side. I don't want any holes. I want it to be as tight of a join as possible. So we work into the stitches as close to the edge as we can. That's the end of the body. Now we rotate our fabric so we can join the underarm, working through both layers. matching up the stitches. Here's my very last stitch. It's through turning chain for both, so just make sure you don't miss that stitch. And then you will fasten off your yarn, pull up on that loop to break it. And now your cardigan is completely assembled. So then you can take all the pieces, turn them to the right side. It will be much easier for you. But here it is. You can take those seams, press them with your fingers to push them in and pull the fabric over, and it'll help them sit better. Just use your fingers to push up on the seams or push down on the seams and work across. I'm not going to do the whole thing because it's hard for me to get my fingers in there, but it'll help your fabric sit better and it'll fit better as you're wearing it. Do the same thing over here. And now the only thing that we need other than weaving in our ends is going to be the collar. And you can see the space here a lot better, which I was worried wasn't going to have any space, but yours is going to have about a 5-inch gap here. That is to account for your neck. We're going to add a collar there, but you can go ahead and try your cardigan on. It's probably going to come up a little bit short in the width, but we're going to make up for that when we add our collar. Now it's time to work the collar. This is the front side of my cardigan facing up. In the bottom corner, I'm going to attach my yarn. Then I'm going to start with a chain 2. This is going to count as our first double crochet here. We're going to double crochet into each stitch all the way around the front only. We're not going around the bottom. You can if you want to. When you get to the bottom edge, you can just continue along and come all the way back around and join. I'm not going to do that. You can. If you do, it will add height to your cardigan. I'm just going to work up over the back and down the other side, and then I'll work a couple rows. So just like we did when we were joining the panels, how we worked 2 stitches per double crochet row, we're going to do the same exact thing. So here I've joined in the bottom corner, then I'm going to work a double crochet into the next chain and a double crochet into the next stitch as well. Then we're going to double crochet into the next row, picking up both loops from the top there. Double crochet into the next stitch. Make sure when you're working, just the same as you did with your slip stitches, you want to work as close to the side edge as possible. That's going to prevent any holes, and it's going to give you the cleanest, most even look. I'm just continuing to double crochet all the way up. working 2 double crochets per row, because these are all double crochets here along the edge. I've gotten to the top. I have one more row of double crochet here before I get to the seam. And there's my second double crochet. Now that we're at the seam, we're going to work a stitch right into the middle, right into the side edge of that seam. Insert your hook and work a double crochet. If you skip this stitch, you will have a hole on the side. Don't mind this hole that I have here, that's because I didn't fasten off my yarn. As I told you, I'm going to reuse the yarn, so it's just pulling from the slack that I have. But you want to insert your hook into that seam and work a double crochet so that it's even. Otherwise it's going to create a hole because it's going to look like there's a stitch missing. The next stitch is going to be worked into that stitch from the back panel. And this is where it would look like you have a hole if you don't work that stitch, right in between those stitches. Then continue working into each stitch across the top of the back panel. When you get to the other side, you're going to work a stitch right into the center of the seam as well. And then continue same exact way, working 2 double crochets per row of double crochet all the way until you get to the bottom edge. That's the last double crochet from the very first row down here. I'm going to work one more double crochet into the next stitch, which is from the foundation chain, and that will match the other side. So we have the same number of stitches on this side as we do on the other side, not counting any of the back panel. I'm just going to pull up a loop there really quickly, and that is row 1 of your collar. This gives us the foundation that we can now work as many rows as we want, just working into these stitches. So you can try on your cardigan at any time. If you get to the width here that feels comfortable to you, you can fasten off, or you can continue adding more rows, as many as you want. Once it gets to a certain size, you'll be able to roll the top over so it'll flip that collar around the back, and then it'll most likely roll to the same appearance on the front, but if you do it long enough, it'll also roll as well. So I'll work one more row all the way around till I get to the other edge, and then all the other rows that you work are going to be exactly the same. So we're going to chain 2 and turn. That counts as our first double crochet. Then we'll double crochet into the next stitch, double crochet into the next stitch as well, and continue double crocheting into each stitch until you get to the other edge. I have one more double crochet here to work. That is going to be into the top chain of the beginning chain 2. Just make sure you don't miss that stitch. It's really easy to miss. I'll pull up a loop here, and that is row 2 of the collar. And that's it. Now you just continue working as many rows as you want. Chain 2, turn, work all the way around. I will put up a chart showing how many rows you should have. And then it's time to fasten off and weave in your remaining ends. There are 2 types of ends that we're going to have weaving in. We're going to have the ones where we joined a new color, so we have 2 strands next to each other. And then we're going to have the one that's on the edge from where we fastened off. I'm going to start down here. When you're working on the edge, you can see that you have like a dip in your fabric. You want to try to round that out. So this is the wrong side of my fabric. This is where my tail end is pulling out from, so I don't want to go back through that hole because it might undo the yarn. So I'm going to come over here to the right side, insert my needle into the very first stitch there on the edge, from the wrong side to the right side. And then I'm going to bring it around the front through the stitch there on the edge, from the right side to the wrong side, and pull through. And I'm going to do it again. I do it sometimes 2 or 3 times. When you look from the right side, you want to just make sure your dip has been covered up. And if you need to, you can do another stitch and even go nearby and then come over too. You just want it to look consistent with the seam that's already there. And so I'm happy with that now. Don't pull too tight. I'm going to work down into the seam. So I'm inserting under one of the stitches I just worked, just to bring my yarn down in the direction I want. And this is super easy to manipulate your fabric as you go. You don't want this end to make that dip shape again. And then I'm going to just work diagonally through the seam. And when I work, I like to break my stitches in half. So here I didn't when I inserted, but exiting I'm breaking the stitch in half. That's going to help catch my yarn better. And then I'm just using my fingers to manipulate the fabric. Then I'll come into a nearby stitch, break it in half, and then go up through several of the stitches I just worked and break my stitch in half again when I exit. I always work at least 3 passes, so I'm going to insert into a nearby stitch here and work back down through several of those stitches. If you feel secure after 2, go ahead and fasten off. If you don't feel secure enough and you need to work a 4th one, go ahead and do that too. You just want to make sure you feel secure with your ends so that they don't come out. And then I can fasten off. Then I'll come up here. This is where I joined a new ball of yarn. I like to take the yarn strands here because they're so close together and just tie them in a knot just one time. And don't pull too tight because you don't want that stitch to shrink down. You want it to stay the same size. I'm going to turn this so that I can stick my arm in the arm opening. And the best way to work here is going to be vertically. We don't want to restrict the stretch of the cardigan, so we're going to just work up and down into a nearby stitch, break it in half, and then I wrap my needle all the way down until I get into that puff stitch. And then you want to hide your tail end in the middle of the puff stitch so you don't see your needle from the right side or the wrong side. That's where it's got a lot of bulk from that puff stitch, and it's going to help capture your yarn and hide it a little bit better. And I just insert into a nearby stitch. I always break it in half on the way in and out. Come up through those stitches that I just worked. That's 2. One more pass. And then I'll tug on it. And if I feel secure, then I'll fasten off and weave it in. If I need to, I can work another pass here. And then I'm going to do basically the same thing with this other tail end. I'm just going to work in a different direction. You don't want to add to that bulkiness that you just worked here. So I'm going to work downward here into this puff stitch, and I'm going to do the same process. And that's how you're going to keep working all your other tail ends. After all your ends are weaved in, then you can turn everything to the right side and it's ready to wear out. I find it so amusing that even though I picked completely random numbers when I worked my samples, it created a little cardigan that is perfect for an American Girl doll or an 18-inch doll. You can see here how the collar folds around the back, but then it opens up as it lays flat. Guys, thanks so much for watching my video. You will find the written pattern linked in the description below. Please smash that like button and hit subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.